Namaskar, เจ้าค่ะพระอาจารย์ My name is Piyanat. I'm a newcomer, so this is my first time here at Chaisai and the first time with you. So I'm feel very blessed. I have two questions. The first question is that when I do the walking meditation, my mind got distracted more easily than the sitting meditation. I could be distracted by beautiful natures, and if not the natures, I try to hold it back to my body. It just normally goes to the mental formation. So I need your help here. This is the first question. And the second question is that I'm trying to contemplate when meditate, considering the 32 body parts, and it works with only skeleton because I feel that I look like a skeleton, so it works. And my question to you is, how could you link these 32 body parts into the 12 links of Paticcasamuppāda? Because sometimes when I try to manasikan, it could go into many links in Paticcasamuppāda. So please kindly elaborate. Thank you.
Very good. So, well, the walking meditation is naturally more distracting than sitting meditation. That's part of the exercise. That's not a problem. It's an attribute of having your eyes open, walking, and the body moving. There's a greater complexity in sensory experience. So it's more of a challenge. It's like rather than going for a walk on level ground, you're climbing a hill. So there's more effort is needed. And so the feeling is, oh, this isn't so easy. Yes, correct. So it's not anything that's wrong with that, but rather it's a part of the exercise. And if we develop walking meditation, then it becomes a very helpful bridge between the quiet and very controlled environment of meditation retreat and then also everyday life. So that if we make a retreat the only environment where we can, quote unquote, really practice, all the rest we just sort of tolerate and wait for the next retreat where everything is very quiet, then we are not really using the practice of Buddha Dhamma to the fullest extent. So Luang Por Chah, Luang Por Sumedho, their style of practice would always focus upon not just walking meditation, but seeing that there's formal practice and informal practice, and not making a big distinction between the value of sitting quietly in a meditation hall or doing walking meditation, and also like a community construction project, or sweeping the paths, or cleaning the toilets, or walking through the town to go to some meeting or other. So that then we are cultivating a continuity of the practice, and we're training the mind to be more adaptable to a big variety of objects. So walking meditation is a kind of a part of that exercise. So you expect it to be more distracting, seeing the plants and the sky and the buildings, the trees, the people, and say, yes, it's more complicated, it's more distracting, but seeing that's also it's quite possible to be fully aware of the present, even when there's a complex field of perception. The second question you had about the 32 parts and the 12 links of dependent origination, there's all kinds of ways one could approach that. I think to in a sense look at why do we contemplate the body in its 32 parts. It's to see it in terms of nature rather than seeing it in terms of duatong, of who and what I am. Also other people, we judge other people as being attractive or unattractive, and we read the signs of other people and judge value according to that. So it's I would say the essence of that pijarana, the investigation of the 32 parts, is to change the perception from based on self-view to based on right view, samadhi, from sakaya ditti to samadhi. That's the essence of it. And so that I would say it's really very close to the Paticcasamuppāda, because what we're in the essence of the reflection of Paticcasamuppāda and looking at that, we're seeing that the arising of different kinds of desire, for sense pleasure, things that we like, aversion, things we dislike, bhavatanha, the desire to become something, vibhavatanha, the desire to get rid of something. These are the way we feed the personality and attachment to the personality. And so also the reflection on Paticcasamuppāda is a way of looking at this life, this mind, this in terms of nature rather than in terms of who and what I am, what I like, what I dislike, and creating that sense of self, and then the dukkha, suffering that comes from that. So I would say the root, the het pachai, the kind of root of both processes is that same change of view. That's the core process, is letting go of self-view and establishing right view. Did you have any other words to say on that, Ajahn? Or just on question, particularly the second one.
ตอบคำถามเกี่ยวกับเรื่องการเดินจงกรมนะเพราะว่าเผื่อจะมีผู้ใหม่หลายท่านคือการเดินจงกรมก็อย่างที่ท่านอาจารย์อธิบายว่ามันก็ท้าทายมันยากกว่าการนั่งนะและผู้ปฏิบัติจำนวนมากเลยก็จะชอบนั่งมากกว่าเดินมันก็ตามที่โยมพูดว่าเดินแล้วมันก็จะมีเห็นโน่นเห็นนี่มันก็มี distraction เยอะใช่ไหมสิ่งที่รบกวนจิตใจแล้วทำให้กระตุ้นทำให้เกิดความคิดเนี่ยเกิดขึ้นเยอะเป็นธรรมดาแต่ท่านอาจารย์ก็บอกว่าความยากก็เป็นเรื่องของการที่จะฝึกนั่นเองคือถึงแม้ว่าเดินจงกรมเนี่ยจะยากกว่าการนั่งแต่ก็เป็นสิ่งที่ควรจะฝึกเพราะว่าอะไรเพราะว่าถ้าทำได้เอาไปประยุกต์ใช้ในชีวิตได้ง่ายเพราะว่าการนั่งสมาธิเนี่ยก็สงบดีแล้วก็ได้ประโยชน์แต่ว่าในชีวิตประจำวันเรามักจะต้องเคลื่อนไหวจะต้องทำโน่นทำนี่เราสามารถจะจับหลักการบางอย่างของการมีสติอยู่กับการเดินจงกรมได้เราจะสามารถเอาไปประยุกต์ใช้ในกิจกรรมต่างๆในชีวิตได้มากและอีกอย่างหนึ่งที่มีประโยชน์มากก็คือว่าในแง่การปฏิบัติให้ต่อเนื่องตลอดทั้งวันโดยเฉพาะอย่างในรีทรีตอันเนี้ยถ้านั่งทั้งวันยาว3-4 ชั่วโมงไม่ไหวแน่ๆนะการที่เราสามารถที่จะสลับระหว่างการนั่ง45 นาทีแล้วก็ไปเดิน45 นาทีกับนั่งอีกเนี่ยทำให้เราสามารถปฏิบัติต่อเนื่องได้เป็นระยะเวลาที่ยาวพอสมควรแล้วจะทำให้เกิดความสงบได้ง่ายข้อดีอีกอย่างหนึ่งคือของการเดินจงกรมที่ยากก็จริงแต่ถ้าสงบจากการเดินได้เนี่ยความสงบจากการเดินจะอยู่ยาวกว่านั้นก็ธรรมดาเนาะนะยากมันก็ได้มาแล้วมันก็จะอยู่กับเรายาวแต่ความสงบจากการนั่งสมาธิถ้าในระดับเบื้องต้นถ้าเกิดสงบก็จะอยู่ไม่นานมากเมื่อเทียบกับการเดินอันนี้ก็เลยเป็นประโยชน์เพราะฉะนั้นทักษะสำคัญในการที่เราจะฝึกจากการเดินจงกรมก็คงไม่ใช่ว่าไปคาดหวังว่ามันจะง่ายหรือว่าทำได้ดีเท่ากับการนั่งแต่ว่าก็เป็นอีกแบบหนึ่งว่าเราจะดึงสติของเรากลับมาอยู่กับการเดินได้ยังไงนะหรือว่าเมื่อรู้ตัวจะได้วางความคิดเรื่องนั้นได้ยังไงให้กลับมาสำหรับอาตมานะตามประสบการณ์คือไอ้ยากยังไม่เท่ากับไอ้ต้นไม้สวยๆยังวางง่ายนะเวลาเกิดโปรเจกต์อะไรสำคัญนะคิดว่าจะทำอะไรสักอย่างนะอันนี้เดินจงกรมเดี๋ยวก็แวบกลับมาบางทีเผลอนี่คิดได้ทั้งโปรเจกต์ อันเนี้ยก็จะเป็นการฝึกอีกแบบหนึ่งที่จะยอมวางในความคิดที่เป็นความฟุ้งนะส่วนในเรื่องปฏิจจสมบัติเดี๋ยวเก็บไว้ก่อนก็แล้วกันรอท่านอาจารย์ฟังท่านอาจารย์ก่อนดีกว่า
Everyone can hear.
Thank you, Ajahn. I think I'm a beginner and I learn a lot. And I learn especially when you say, be mindful when you meditate, when your mind wanders around. Don't try to force it. So I think that is quite gentle for me to handle. Thank you. So I have two questions. The first question is pertaining to what you discussed. Desire is liar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to work around it, but I still don't quite grasp the concept of desire is liar. So I'd like to get more guidance. The second question I have is pertaining to the opposite of desire, which is fear. Like in a layman, you always fear of A, B, C, D. How do you manage that fear? Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay. So we've got a couple of weeks. So very good questions. And so have you been on this retreat before? No, it's your first time. So desire is a liar. So desire, tanha, is a very instinctual process. It's not conceptual. It's not just like an idea. So when we follow a desire, the more the mind is absorbed into it, it's like, if I get this thing, I will be happy. And I will be happy. We also think I will be happy forever. We don't, if we spell it out, we think, no, it's not right. But if it does with the tanha, craving on its own, that's the message. Oh, if I could just get this, that is good. So it's a liar in saying it's an absolute good. It will make me completely happy. That's the lie. It's not saying there isn't any pleasure. So like in Buddha Dhamma, the Buddha speaks about gratification, asada. So if you're hungry and you eat some food, you eat some food, oh yes, yeah, there's that's called asada, gratification. That's not necessarily anything unwholesome. It's like the body needs some food to stay alive, and that pleasant feeling that comes from that is a natural result. So asada is gratification. It's when there's not seeing clearly, avijja, ignorance, then that hunger goes up. I gotta have, and oh no, there's only three of them left, and there's 6 people in front of me. I've got to have it, and the mind focuses. I've got to have that thing, and if I don't have that thing, I won't be happy. I won't be complete, and that's bad. So the more, the stronger the avijja, the ignorance, which literally means not seeing clearly, not knowing clearly, then the more we believe the lie. That's how it is. So again, I could go on for a week on this area. But say, for example, my first experience, my first insight with this, I was about 3 or 4 years old. And probably many of you have heard me tell this story before. So we were a very poor family. And so the system was that the children, myself and my 2 sisters, we only ever got presents when it was birthday or Christmas, twice a year. Otherwise, nothing. Just our parents are very kind, but very broke. So that was the system. I only got presents twice a year. So we lived in the countryside. There were farmers, and there was a little village. And in the village, there was a toy shop. And in the window of the toy shop, there was a particular little car, what they call a bubble car. Back in the 1950s and 60s, BMW made a 3-wheel car, 2 wheels at the front, 1 wheel at the back. It's called a bubble car, with a door at the front. And there was this little toy bubble car in the window of the toy shop, and I fell completely in love. Whenever we went to the village, I would go to when we passed the toy shop, I'd be up against the window and please, 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 can I have this little mauve bubble car? The color was mauve, like a kind of pale purple. So I begged my mother, please, 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 can I have that little mauve bubble car? If you give me that, if I have that, I'll never want anything ever again. I'll never ask for anything ever again. And I believed that. At that age, at 3 or 4 years old, it was absolutely, I couldn't imagine. You don't have much abstract thinking. You understand that? So you can't think conceptually or in abstract terms when you're 3 or 4 years old. It's very direct. You can only do that after you're about 7. So I think that's one of the reasons why you only get arahants from 7 years old onwards, because they need to have abstract thinking. That's my theory. Anyway, I'm not 7. And so I told my mother, please, 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 if I can just have the little mauve bubble car, I'll never want anything ever again. And so, and I meant it. I really felt that to be true. So then we go into the village, coming up to my birthday, which then we go into the village, and the little mauve bubble car has vanished from the shop window. Heartbreak, it's gone. Somebody has sold it. So, and I think I went into the shop and said, please, and it was Mr. Gray, who was the toy shop owner. He had these big, thick round glasses. Mr. Gray, what's happened to the little mauve bubble car? And I think he was in on the plot with my mother. He said, oh, I don't know. Don't know what you mean. I think it must have gone. So I was heartbroken. Then on my birthday, there's a little mauve bubble car. And I'm so happy, so happy. And then I'm playing with it for a day or 2 days, 3 days. By the end of the week, Mom, can I have ABC, XYZ? And she said, you said if you got the little mauve bubble car, you would never want anything ever again. I thought, yeah, well, yeah, I did mean it, but what about XYZ? So, so that was my first lesson in the desire being a liar. And so, and though I couldn't really get my mind around it, but I could at least think, well, yeah, I did feel that. I did know that. But my mother wouldn't let me forget that. So when she would keep reminding me whenever I wanted anything, so if you got the little mauve bubble car, you'd never want anything. So, and when I left, I left England and went traveling, my mother kept the bubble car. So, and after she passed away, she kept it for many, many years. I put it in her coffin with her. So it's now in the ground. That's that same little thing with my mother in the ground 20 years ago. So that was a helpful insight. I got as far as but it wasn't until much later I had that sense. So it's wanting things is not a problem. Being attracted towards things or aversive to things, that's not a problem. It's when the mind grasps, when there is that quality of upadana, tanha upadana bhava, craving, grasping, and becoming. That's where liking and disliking turn into the causes for dukkha. They lead towards dukkha. Just liking something is just liking. Disliking something is just disliking. The mind can be completely aware of a pleasant feeling and say, yes, this is delicious. This is delicious. Or this is really painful. This is awful. If we don't add anything to it, there's no lie. There's no promise of like, if you get this, you'll be happy forever. It's just, I'm hungry. This is my favorite food. And here's a yes feeling. That's all. So then with regards to fear, then that's something I've had to work with a lot over time. And that is again, it's we focus upon fear in things that we are afraid of. I'm afraid of illness, or I'm afraid of people not liking me, or I'm afraid of losing the people I love, or I'm afraid of being broke, having no money. I'm afraid of the world being in state of conflict. I'm afraid there won't be enough breakfast for me. So it can be all kinds of things. So we focus on the object, the thing that we are afraid of. So in terms of practice, and I'm very, very, very grateful to Lumpur Sumedho in the late 1980s, early 90s, and he focused on mindfulness of emotion a lot. Many of his teachings from about 86 to 91 was a lot about mindfulness of emotion. And what he would point out is when it works with fear or with jealousy, with desire, with aversion, irritation, whatever kind of emotional state, the task, the practice is to take the attention off the thing that we are afraid of, or that we are annoyed by, or that we desire, and bring the attention back into the body. What is the feeling of fearing? What is it like? So that is not easy to do because the mind focuses on the thing I'm worried about. That thing, if that went away, I would be happy. If I didn't have this threat, this problem, then everything would be good. So taking the attention off the thing that we're worried about and to focus on the experience of fearing itself. Understand? Because the fear is a state of mind that has arisen. And that never occurred to me to do that until listening to Ajahn Sumedho. So, oh yeah, this is a thing that has arisen. And I was such an anxious person, I didn't even realize that I created that. And I felt all the time. I often say that my basic relationship to life was, if it exists, worry about it. It's your duty to worry. Even if it's nothing to do with my life, I would make it my problem. So this is a really helpful practice. And so when you notice you're worried about something external or internal, the mind is getting caught into worry, okay? Take it off the thought or the thing you see or hear or imagine, and then feel it in the body. Where is this sense of fear? And I would often find like there's a tension in my stomach, in the abdomen. And then noticing how the body is holding that feeling of fear. And then again, like I've been saying today, rather than, oh, I'm all tense, my belly is really tight, I should relax. But instead, to just notice that stressing, that tensing, being aware of that, and then allowing the letting go just to happen as a natural result of seeing that. Like when you realize you're stressing or tensing, then you can't sustain it. You naturally let go, not because the Ajahn said you should, or it's the program, but because that your own satipanya, your own mindfulness and wisdom guides the relaxation, like a leaf falling off a tree in the autumn time, or the rain falling from the clouds. It's just that's the natural result. When the clouds are filled with so much water, then the rain comes. So when the mind is aware of that amount of stressing, then it can't sustain it. It's like, wow, you can spell it out. You can give words to it to say, oh, why am I creating so much tension? But you don't even need to use the words. That awareness has the effect of bringing the relaxation. Then after the system, and so I did this practice, focusing on fear, worry, for 2 or 3 years as my main focus for my Dhamma practice. And one thing that's really interesting, when you relax the body and then you ask the question, what was it that I was worried about? Then there'll be a moment of, oh yes, you have to recreate the problem. Because if you don't make it a problem, it's not a problem. Which is a really interesting insight. And so I would make sure I noticed that if you don't, you have to recreate it as a problem. There's still maybe the situation, you still owe money that you haven't got, or you're still hungry, but the mind making it into a problem is something that is added. Even the most challenging difficulties of life, they're not intrinsically, you understand that word? Yeah. They're not intrinsically a problem until the mind says, this is a problem. So that was a big insight. So that's that 2 or 3 seconds where you have to recreate the problem. So that's the clue. Like, oh, if I don't make it a problem, it's not a problem. Oh. Doesn't mean your debts are paid off. Well, everybody loves you, but it's the mind holds in a different way. A question for Ajahn Jiew, please. You can answer this one.
กราบนมัสการพระอาจารย์เจ้าค่ะ Here is Yom Nong speaking. I just found out that Yom Sudavati and I were born in the same year of the rooster. No wonder we both kept ourselves very busy. She's been very busy doing the gardening, and I've been very busy taking care of the Farang monks for over 20 years now. So we just found out that 2 years from now, we both very energetic, will become 80. And we don't feel that we will be the old ladies, but only 18 all the time. Now get to my question. I kept on wondering that I cannot rationalize the reasons between Trairak and the Four Noble Truths. Because every time it starts with suffering. So I just wonder why the Dhamma teachings always focus on sufferings. Thank you, Phra Ajahn.
Okay, just give it a try, and Ajahn for sure will
I'm
elaborate
interested to hear
more.
what you have to say.
Oh, thank you, Ajahn. Well, my argument about when someone criticizes Buddhism that we seem to focus on the negative signs of life, suffering, always begins the teaching with suffering, is that the aims of Buddhism that based on the education system, that we want to understand life. The ideas in Buddhist teaching, from my understanding, is that the more we understand our life, the better we can live our life in harmony with nature and also find our own happiness. So on these lines of teaching, we have to understand life as it is. And when the teaching in Buddhism talk about life as in terms of suffering, I think that we focus on this is the reality or the nature of this existence. So you see, when you mentioned about Trailak, one in the Trailak, Anicang, Tukkhang, Anatta, right? The Tukkhang here is not the suffering in the general meaning that people would feel, right? It's the state that something cannot stay in the same state permanently. So in this definition, it means that everything is in dukkha. It's the nature of it. Just like, when people talking about the nature in terms of quantum physics, we might not understand it, but it is in the nature anyway. And also with that kinds of the nature of life as suffering in itself, and for me, it clearly linked to the first teaching of the Buddha, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, that based on Four Noble Truths that you mentioned. Remember, this is very. I think that we should, as Thai Buddhists, we should focus more on this teaching, because when I ask many Thai people, they don't seem to really focus on this first teaching of the Buddha so much. You remember that the first thing that the Buddha talked about suffering in life, for sure, he started with birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha, death is dukkha, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief is dukkha. So this is something that we are familiar with. But then he didn't stop just that, right? There are another three kinds of suffering here, or dukkha here, that he mentioned. The first one is that associating with something that you don't like is dukkha. To be parted from something you like is dukkha. Not attaining one wishes is dukkha. Wanting something and you don't get what you want is dukkha. So by these three definitions, you can say that how many people in this world, or how many of us that we don't have that on the daily basis. We have dukkha in this sense, right? So don't you think it's important, since we have this, don't you think it's important that we should understand it? And then the Buddha offer us the insights of this kind of suffering, not in the way that, oh, life is suffering, so we don't have to do anything with it, we just accept it, we just endure with it. No, it's not the ideas of in Buddhism. We have to weigh out, which mean that we have to understand, to comprehend the suffering. So we understand the root cause of it, samudaya, and then we can let go of this, abandon the root cause of suffering, which means that we can experience the real happiness. So the ideas of Buddhist teaching is that we suffer because we don't understand things as they are. We don't understand the nature of it. So what we are doing here in this retreat, and also people who come to study Buddhism, practice as a monastic or lay person, we aim to understand this, to liberate ourselves from suffering. So it's kind of what's the word? Contradiction in itself. Focus on suffering, but then in order to free ourselves from suffering. So this is why.
This is a common question. Maybe just to follow up on something that Ajahn Jiew was saying. So not to get too technical, but in the teachings they talk about three levels of dukkha. And in the morning chanting, then we're kind of tagging each of those three levels. So the first level is called dukkha, like painful feeling. Birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are dukkha. So that's like painful things that happen in our life and in our body. That's dukkha. Ow, this thing hurts. So then the second kind is called viparinama dukkha. So that's dukkha because of things changing, that something that you want that you haven't got, something that you've got that is going to be lost. Not getting that sense of not being able to hold on to a thing, not being able to hold on to your health. If you're nearly 80 and you feel like you're 18, and that not quite as maybe the mind feels that way, but the body doesn't quite act and function in exactly that 18-year-old way. So that viparinama dukkha is that dissatisfaction based on the nature of change. The most refined kind of dukkha is sankhara dukkha. So that the panchupadana khandha dukkha. So that's the very unsatisfactoriness of thingness. This is a little bit refined, but in terms of nature, there aren't really any things. We use the word thing, a kong, because of a convenient way of speaking. We can say, this is a bell, this is a microphone, this is a human being, this is a building. This isn't intrinsically a building. It's a process of these bamboo plants were growing, and then people cropped them, and then Mamta and her team had the idea to build this hall, put it all together, and we say, building. And then in the future, when all the termites have come and have eaten all the bamboo, and it won't be a building anymore. So it's a process. That what we find in nature is processes, not really permanent, solid things. And you mentioned the world of physics, quantum physics, and if any of you studied physics or chemistry, you know that the entire physical world is incessantly in a state of change. No thing sits still, even for the tiniest fraction of a moment. So we use the idea of a thing as a convenient way. Say a convenient way of speaking, like I'm Ajahn Amaro. This is Ajahn Jiew. This is Chitta Sangwon. This is Jyoti Dhamma. Sister Jnana Siri. We are these human beings, but we all ate breakfast and the meal today. So what was part of Chaisai kitchen yesterday is now us as human beings, right? Same as you. So our bodies are in a constant state of change. So again, it's a little bit refined, but why we create dukkha is because we think that things are real and solid, they're permanent, and then when they fall apart or they don't work or it doesn't function in the way that we expect, then there's disappointment. But also, at the most refined level, the mind that creates the idea of a solid, permanent thing, right there, is creating the causes for dukkha. So the mind that's really awake and aware, it knows the flow of processes. It's the flow of process, not things. We say things arise and pass away. Not quite. There aren't really any things. There's just patterns of experience arising and passing away, patterns of the material world arising and passing away. So even to say, everything arises and passes away, it's like, well, that's how it looks from the view of attachment. But in itself, the physical universe, the mental universe, patterns of nature in a constant state of flow and change. There aren't really any solid, permanent things. So even to say all things are impermanent, it's like, well, they aren't really things. So the Pali word sankhara is the best description of sankhara is an event, not a thing. It's a pattern of processes of nature. Anyway, not to get too refined. So more directly to respond to Yomnong's question is why do we focus on dukkha, or why is that the starting point? It's like, well, why do we have hospitals? Why do we have doctors? Why is being a doctor, a worthwhile career? It's because we can be pretty sure that human bodies will continue to not work perfectly. It's like, have you ever, any of your children or yourself thought, I'm not going to bother going to medical school because one day nobody will get sick anymore? I don't think so. They're never going to close the hospitals because nobody's getting ill, I would suggest. That as we've seen with illnesses like COVID, that didn't exist and then they arise up. So even if we cure all the illnesses that we can name right now, the way nature works is that more illnesses will rise up. So if we look at the psychological experience of dukkha, like physical disease, the Buddha is addressing the fact that if you are alive, if you have a body, if you're not totally enlightened, then there's going to be the experience of dissatisfaction arising. That's part of the system. Just like if you're born, the body is not going to work perfectly all of the time. That's not a negative view. That's how nature works. So it's not being nihilistic. It's like, say, why do we have medical schools? Be positive. Shut all the medical schools and just hope for the best. That's not very wise, I would say. So we continue to keep the medical schools and hospitals and doctors' surgeries going because statistically it's very likely we're going to keep needing doctors and medicines to look after these bodies. So the Buddha, starting his teaching with the experience of dukkha, is in a way saying that this is what we experience. If we're unenlightened, there's the experience of dissatisfaction from time to time. This is what we experience. I often think that with both the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha's first discourse, the unspoken background to it is, if there is an ultimate reality, if the Dhamma is real, why are we not happy all of the time? That's the kind of unspoken question behind the Dhammacakka Sutta and the Four Noble Truths. if there is an ultimate reality that's the fundamental truth, the fundamental nature of our lives and of all things, why are we not happy and free all of the time? That's kind of, it's not stated in the sutta, but I feel it's like an unspoken principle. And then the Four Noble Truths is saying, well, the reason why is because of a danha and attachment to danha, and then that causes dukkha. And so that similarly with the second teaching, the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, again, the unspoken background is if there is an Atman, if the Atman is true and real, then its nature is Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, bliss. So if there is an Atman, if the Atman is real and its fundamental nature is awareness and blissfulness, why are we not blissful? Yeah, because that was the understanding of the nature of Atman in the Buddha's time. So the Buddha's teaching is very practical, rather than starting from there is an ultimate reality, take my word for it. He's more like the doctor that says, where does it hurt? So he's a philosopher. He's not a philosopher. He's like a medical practitioner. It's not he doesn't dwell upon theory, but rather, where does it hurt? Where does your life hurt? And so that, how many of us go to the doctor because we're feeling comfortable and happy? Not very many. We go to the doctor when something's not working. So the Buddha is like, he's saying, idang dukkhang, there is dukkha, is like the doctor, going to the doctor, and the doctor saying, okay, where does it hurt? Okay, and this is what to do about it to arrive at some health. Do you want to translate some of that? We've been talking in English a lot, so for people who don't have great English.
อาตมาสรุปสั้นๆเรื่องว่าเมื่อกี้พูดเรื่องว่าพุทธศาสนาเริ่มต้นว่าเรื่องทุกข์นะว่าชีวิตเป็นทุกข์นะทำไมถึงเป็นการเริ่มต้นที่ทุกข์ก็อาตมาก็เห็นว่าพุทธศาสนาสอนชีวิตตามความเป็นจริงนะพูดถึงชีวิตโดยธรรมชาตินะแล้วที่จุดมุ่งหมายสำคัญของการที่จะสอนเรื่องนี้ก็คือเพื่อที่จะทำให้เราพ้นทุกข์ด้วยนะไม่ใช่สอนทุกข์แล้วให้เราก็อยู่กับทุกข์ไปยอมรับมันไปอย่างเดียวแต่ว่ามันมีวิธีการหรือมีหนทางอย่างเมื่อกี้ท่านอาจารย์ก็บอกว่าพระพุทธเจ้าเป็นแพทย์ผู้ยิ่งใหญ่เหมือนเวลาที่ท่านก็ยกว่าที่บอกว่าชีวิตนั้นเป็นทุกข์สอนเรื่องพุทธศาสนาก็เหมือนกับในโลกเนี่ยเราบอกว่าแล้วทำไมเราต้องมีโรงพยาบาลจะต้องมีหมอนะแล้วบอกว่าเพราะว่าชีวิตเราของเราก็เป็นอย่างนี้ร่างกายของมนุษย์ก็เป็นอย่างนี้ที่พร้อมที่จะเจ็บไข้ได้ป่วยเพราะฉะนั้นการมีแพทย์หรือมีโรงพยาบาลก็เลยเป็นเรื่องที่สำคัญนะถ้ามองจากแง่มุมนี้เนี่ยนะก็เป็นอย่างนั้นก็คือว่าเมื่อเจ็บไข้ได้ป่วยนะก็จำเป็นจะต้องไปหาหมอคงไม่มีใครที่เรียกว่าสุขสบายมีความสุขแล้วก็เดินไปโรงพยาบาลไปนอนเล่นที่โรงพยาบาลเงี้ยก็คงไม่มีใช่ไหมอาตมาเคยพูดกับลูกศิษย์ที่ทำงานที่โรงพยาบาลเสมอว่าคนที่มีความสุขเขาก็ไม่มาหาเรานะก็ต้องทำใจคือกลุ่มนี้ก็เป็นคนที่น่าเห็นใจนะต้องรับความเครียดอย่างหนึ่งพวกทำงานในโรงพยาบาลเพราะว่าเขาต้องเจอกับคนที่มีความทุกข์แล้วตัวเองก็มีความทุกข์อยู่ตัวด้วยเหมือนกันแล้วบางทีทุกข์ไปเจอกับทุกข์นี่บางทีก็เครียดก็ทำให้เกิดอารมณ์หงุดหงิดอะไรได้ง่ายอันนี้เวลาเราไปโรงพยาบาลก็ต้องเห็นใจพวกเจ้าหน้าที่อย่างนี้เหมือนกันนะว่าเขาต้องรับมือกับคนที่ทุกข์นะแล้วก็บางทีหาวิธีจัดการกับจิตใจของตัวเองไม่ได้นะเพราะฉะนั้นเมื่อเรามีโรงพยาบาลหรือมีคุณหมอที่จะวินิจฉัยเรื่องของความทุกข์แต่ความทุกข์ในเรื่องของจิตใจก็มีพุทธองค์เป็นผู้วินิจฉัยว่าทุกข์ของเรามันมาจากการที่เรามีความเข้าใจผิดมีอวิชชาเกี่ยวกับชีวิตแล้วทำให้เกิดตัณหาคือการยึดมั่นถือมั่นในสิ่งที่จะนำให้เกิดเป็นความทุกข์แล้วพระองค์ก็ทรงเสนอมรรควิธีการในการที่เราจะภาวนา นะเพื่อทำให้เราสามารถเข้าถึงความจริงอันนี้เราสามารถที่จะวางนะสมุทัยวางตัณหาที่เป็นต้นตอของความทุกข์ได้ด้วยปัญญา
So I hope that answers some of your question. Roosters are very confident. So may that not go dim as the years go by. Any other questions? Things to clarify? Yes. If you can wait for a microphone.
กราบนมัสการพระอาจารย์ towards the end of your last answer, you talked about Atman. What was that? And then something to do with bliss, something 1, 2, and 3, third one being
Sat
bliss.
Chit Ananda is it's Sanskrit, and that's so the nature of the Atman according to Vedic and Hindu philosophy. The nature of the Atman.
What's the Atman?
Atta.
Oh.
Atta in Pali, Atman in Sanskrit. So that's why the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, the background to that is, if there is an atta, then it should be fully aware, blissful, and permanent. And so that the Buddha is then going through the 5 khandhas and saying these can't be a true and absolute Atman, because they're not blissful, they're not stable, and they're not truly who and what we are. And so that he's helping his 5 companions to change their view, because the view was that we have there is the Atman, there is the true self, and that after so many lifetimes and spiritual development, in that Atman will be reunited with Brahman, and that will be the kind of fulfillment of spiritual potential. So he's sort of working with the spiritual landscape of his time, the beliefs that they had, so that, okay, if there is an Atman, then it should be blissful and permanent and absolutely who and what you are, awake and aware and who and what you are. And then so he's walking through each of the 5 khandhas, the body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, even discriminative consciousness, and for each one saying, well, that can't be the Atman because it's changing. It can't. It's unsatisfactory. It's not subject to personal will. Can you say of the body or feelings, perceptions, this is me, this is what I am, this is my true self? Can it be said, be like this, don't be like that? And then his friends say, no, it can't. So if you can't tell the body, be like this, don't be like that, and you can't tell your feelings, be like this, don't be like that, then if they're not subject to personal will, how could they be your Atman, your Atta? So he's walking them through that, like an analysis of their belief system, to say, look, what you're believing in, it doesn't hold up. It's not consistent. And so that's it's a way of helping his friends to change their view on what the idea there is a permanent absolute I, an Atman, an Atta. And so rather than the Buddha defining the true Atman, the true Atta, your true self is ABC, is like this. He took the approach of encouraging them to let go of what they're not, so that the Atman can't be found in terms of the body or feelings, perceptions, mental formations, or even discriminative consciousness. And so that he took the approach of letting go of the attachments, rather than creating an idea of your true Atta, your true self is this or that. So that again, it's the unspoken background to that second teaching, is that belief system in the Atman and a true permanent individual identity. That makes sense? If it doesn't, please say so. Yeah.
พอได้เจ้าค่ะ
For the Four Noble Truths, is that if there is an ultimate reality, if the Dhamma is real, why are we not happy all of the time? If the fundamental nature of our life is the Dhamma, if the Dhamma is the absolute reality, if that's the fundamental nature of what we are, why are we not happy? And so that's the... Please, yeah. This is just the Amaro theory. It's not... You won't find that in a book. That's
คือ
my
ท่านอาจารย์
Amara concept.
ขอโอกาสท่านอาจารย์พูดถึงเรื่องที่แต่มาคิดว่าน่าสนใจก็เลยจะขอโอกาสท่านอาจารย์แปลคือเมื่อกี้ท่านอาจารย์พูดถึงพระสูตรสำคัญในทางพุทธศาสนาก็พระสูตรแรกก็จะเป็นเรื่องของธรรมจักรกับปวัตตนสูตรเราคงคุ้นกันดีเป็นคำสอนแรกของพุทธองค์ซึ่งสอนเรื่องอริยสัจสี่และอีกอันหนึ่งที่ท่านอาจารย์พูดถึงก็คืออนัตตลักษณสูตรก็คือพระสูตรที่พูดถึงเรื่องไตรลักษณ์อนิจจังทุกขังอนัตตาคือพระสูตรทั้งสองก็มีความสำคัญใช่ไหมเพราะว่าสูตรแรกธรรมจักรกับปวัตตนสูตรนี้ทำให้อัญญโกฏัญญะได้เป็นพระโสดาบันมีผู้บรรลุธรรมเป็นครั้งแรกแล้วก็อนัตตลักษณสูตรก็คือพระปัญจวัคคีย์ทั้งห้าบรรลุธรรมเป็นอรหันต์แล้วท่านอาจารย์ก็ให้ประเด็นหนึ่งที่ท่านอาจารย์ก็บอกว่านี่เป็นทฤษฎีของอาจารย์อมโรนะไม่ใช่หาที่อื่นไม่ได้นะก็คืออาตมาคิดว่าก็เป็นเรื่องที่น่าสนใจก็เลยขอโอกาสแปลไม่รู้จะตรงได้ทั้งหมดหรือเปล่านะถ่ายทอดนิดหน่อยก็คือว่าท่านอาจารย์บอกว่าที่จริงเนี่ยในคำสอนเรื่องอริยสัจต้องมีคำถามนะที่แฝงเร้นอยู่ที่เรามองไม่เห็นนะก็คือคำถามที่บอกว่าถ้ามันมีความจริงสูงสุดของชีวิตที่ว่ามันเป็นธรรมะที่สมบูรณ์ที่มันพร้อมนะแล้วทำไมเรายังทุกข์อยู่ที่ว่ามีคำถามนี้แฝงเร้นอยู่เพราะว่าพระสูตรนี้ก็เป็นการอธิบายคำตอบนี้ว่ามันไม่มีไงเพราะถ้ามันเป็นอย่างนี้มันก็ไม่ทุกข์นะที่เรียกว่าถ้าชีวิตมันจะมี ultimate เหมือนกับว่าเป็นความจริงสูงสุดเป็นธรรมะที่มันไม่มีอะไรที่จะบกพร่องเลยนะแต่เนื่องจากชีวิตมันเป็นแบบนี้ใช่ไหมมันพร่องของมันอยู่เสมอมันมีตัณหามันก็เลยทำให้เราเนี่ยเป็นทุกข์อันนี้คือเป็นที่มาของคำสอนนะแต่ในส่วนของอนัตตลักษณสูตรเนี่ยคำถามที่แฝงเร้นอยู่ในคำสอนเกี่ยวกับเรื่องอนิจจังทุกขังอนัตตานั่นก็คือว่าถ้ามันมีสิ่งที่เรียกว่าอัตมันท่านใช้คำสันสกฤตที่อัตมันภาษาบาลีเราก็เป็นอัตตาก็คร่าวๆก็คือว่าถ้าในความเป็นจริงเนี่ยมันมีตัวตนที่แน่นอนชัดเจนตายตัวอยู่แล้วทำไมไอสิ่งที่เป็นความเปลี่ยนแปลงเนี่ยเกิดขึ้นได้ยังไงไอความไม่คงที่ไม่ถาวรไอความยึดถือไม่ได้นะไอความสุขนะที่ไม่สามารถจะหาได้จากไอชีวิตนี้มันเกิดขึ้นได้ยังคือสิ่งที่มันเป็นคำถามที่แฝงอยู่ภายใต้คำสอนที่เป็นพระสูตรใหญ่สองข้อนี้เพราะว่าถ้าเราไปดูรายละเอียดของอนัตตลักษณสูตรที่จริงก็น่าสนใจนะคือพระองค์ตรัสถามเป็นเหมือนกับคำถามคำตอบนั่งไล่ถามปัญจวัคคีย์ห้ารูปว่าตัวตนนี้เป็นอัตตาหรือเป็นอนัตตามันเที่ยงหรือไม่เที่ยงอะไรเงี้ยก็ไล่ไปเรื่อยๆพอพบความจริงว่ามันไม่เป็นลักษณะที่ว่ามีตัวมีตนที่ชัดเจนแน่นอนปัญจวัคคีย์ทั้งห้ารูปก็เข้าใจถึงเรื่องความจริงก็บรรลุธรรมก็ประเด็นใหญ่ที่คิดว่าสำคัญก็คือคำถามที่อาจารย์บอกว่ามันอยู่แฝงเร้นอยู่ภายใต้คำสอนที่ไม่ได้พูดออกมาแต่ว่ามันอยู่ภายใต้คำสอนอันนี้นะซึ่งเราอาจจะไปภาวนาได้
Ajahn just talk about the abstract thinking about to be Arahant. I'm quite interested in this word. Could Ajahn please explain more? Thank you.
Well, this is just another Amaro theory. There's a lot of those, but yeah, in the Theravada tradition, you never get an arahant who's younger than 7 years old. There are stories that are quite reliable of novices who are 7 years old who become arahants, but never any younger. And also the the ordination as a samanera, as a novice, can't be given to anyone younger than 7. And so that, to me, even though in some Buddhist countries you do get really tiny kind of baby samanin and mechi in some Buddhist countries, I would say that, according to the Vinaya, you have to be old enough to be able to scare crows, to run after the crows and scare them off the fields. And so 7 years old is the defined, say, lower limit. So to me, that the enlightenment, to the degree I understand that process, it requires a certain amount of wise reflection, yoniso manasikara. And that is, again, it's interesting, it matches very closely Western psychology, in developmental psychology, that at the age of about 7, you're capable of abstract thinking. You can arrange concepts and think about things that are not present. You might have some other abilities, like with music or mathematics when you're younger. You get, little children who have kind of extraordinary abilities, but the capacity to reflect upon, like, your own emotions, to your own memories, your thoughts, your imagination, that quality of reflecting upon your own experience without attaching to it, that it seems that we can only really do that at about 7 years old. And so there's probably a few educational developmental psychologists in the room, so please excuse me if I've got that wrong, but yeah, I studied psychology years ago in the university, and that was as I remember, in the process of development, that that capacity for kind of stepping outside your life and looking at it in an objective way. It's not until we're about 7 years old that we can do that. The sort of, hey, why do I feel that? And before that, 4, 5, 6 years old is like, or like, yes, we know we're excited, or we know we're upset, or we know we're afraid, but we can't. The mind can't form that question. Hey, look at that! That makes me really afraid. Wonder why that happens. Or, oh, I get really excited when I win a prize. Oh, why is it that way? It's at that kind of age. So I think for enlightenment, and it's one of the bases of stream entry, the supportive conditions for stream entry, is yoniso manasikara. Also Dhamma Paticcasamuppāda is also another of the conditions for stream entry. So I think that my feeling is that only can be really put to use at that kind of an age. In other Buddhist traditions, they have people who are recognized as great high lamas, even when they're sort of newly born babies. But still, I've been around 1 or 2 of those high lamas at the age of 4 or 5, and they're still kids. They might be treated very, very respectfully by their carers, but sometimes Rinpoche needs a good earful to be told how to behave. So anyway, that's my perspective on that. That without that capacity for wise reflection, to step outside of your life and look at it in an objective way, in a sense, is seeing your mind and your life in terms of nature rather than just in terms of your own likes and dislikes and what's familiar, then that's what is one of the necessary qualities for liberation. It's also why people say, well, my dog is a very enlightened being, or my cat. It's not just an animal. Especially when we talk about the negative aspects of being born in the animal realm, particularly Westerners, not so much in the East, but a bit more in the East now, they say, my dog is very wise. How dare you talk about the birth in the animal realm as something very negative. I would like to be born as a cat. My cat is extremely wise. And so you have to tread a little carefully. But I've grown up with a lot of animals, lived with animals. I would say it is extremely difficult for beings in the animal realm to reflect upon their own impulses, of like, dislike. And there are stories of great compassionate acts or faithfulness of animals, but to be able to reflect upon their own state, I think, is one of the downsides of the animal realm. It's seemingly it's almost impossible for an animal to reflect upon their own condition, as far as one can tell. So an hour has gone by. Let's pull it to a close there.